Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We have another story to tell you tonight. We're going to tell you the story of how one Midwestern girl decided that her place was in the U.S. Army in World War II and how she beat a path all the way to Tokyo. This presentation is named My Grandmother Wore Army Boots, which is the name that she gave it when she wrote the story out for me when I was a younger person. Tonight I'm joined on camera by my wife, Heather, who's here. Go ahead and say hi, Heather.
Hi.
And Heather here is a little bit of a subject matter expert on World War II, and particularly female attributes of the war. So the story here starts in Indiana. And what year do we say she graduated high school? Was it 1941, I believe?
I think she graduated.
In 41, yeah.
Yeah.
Laura says hello.
Hi, Laura.
So, in 1941, my grandmother graduates high school in Logansport, Indiana, and then immediately moves to Chicago to attend nursing school there. She does 4 years of nursing school there, so by the time she is of age to join the war effort, it is already late. It is 1945. Now, hi, Jeff. Jeff, stay tuned. We got a little special piece for you in here. So it's 1945 by the time she gets graduating from her school in Chicago and does a few months in a local hospital there. And the photographs and items we're going to show you tonight really notate her journey from Chicago all the way to the eastern coast of the United States, then back to the western coast of the United States, and then all the way to Tinian and eventually to Tokyo. By all points west. So she reports for induction into the Army on January 17th, 1945. And 2 days later, she is issued her AGO card. Not looking very happy in this photograph, as we can all see. And on the back, there are her fingerprints, standard vitals, birthday. But this is your standard AGO card issued to every soldier, officer, enlisted man during the war. AGO standing for Attorney General's Office. And this is the card you're given as your induction. From induction, she goes to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. Now, this is mid-Wisconsin, also in the middle of January, so we can imagine that the weather there is rather cold. Camp McCoy is a very interesting place, and we looked it up this morning, didn't we? Where we saw there was all kinds of activity at Camp McCoy. Particularly, what did we see there at Camp McCoy that was of note?
It was a prisoner of war camp.
For all three Axis powers, right? The Italians,
I do believe it said all three Axis.
Yeah.
It was also a hospital for captured prisoners.
And Jeff has been there.
And obviously it was the training for where the nurses were taken in and inducted, not training, but that's where they went for
this is their basic training,
their basic
right?
training.
This was not
and then also it was the training for the 100th
battalion, the
yep.
Nisei, yeah, the Nisei of
the Hawaiian Nisei.
The Hawaiian Nisei. That was not the 442 of the Go for Broke fame, but it was the parent unit or the experimental unit that originally formed the core of the Nisei to prove the concept. So Camp McCoy in January is probably pretty chilly, and here we see some interesting photographs of camp life. In researching this morning, Lex was researching this morning, we had found a couple other memoirs, didn't we, of people who were very, very clearly in the same unit. The unit she ends up joining, by the way, is the 309th.
I think
309th General Hospital.
Yes.
And there was 300 nurses attached to that unit. So you can imagine in a group of 300 people, that's 3 companies worth of women. Chances are they probably all crossed paths. So it was very interesting reading other people's stories and remembering from when my grandmother told me as a young boy the stories of her time there. So starting off with the photographs, we have And most of these are notated, so I will read the back and then I'll show you the photograph. And this she refers to herself as one of the 5 sad sacks. They're in fatigues and standing on the steps of what is referred to as Ye Old Barracks. Now you can see here the snow piled up on the sides of the door. That's a good healthy snow, and for those of us who've been in colder climates, you can imagine it's not very fun. She is the one right here on the back left-hand side, our left, their right. And we see some people there acting goofy, doing goofy things. And then we're going to change up poses, and now we're all seated in different spaces. And on this one, we have, again, the 5 gold brickers. So they were really proud of their ability to get out of doing work. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the basic training experience for women was, if it was as rigorous as the men's. But I'm sure, I do remember her telling me stories about they had to go to the gas chamber, they had to do marches. And for a woman who at the time of her induction weighed about, I believe it's 125 pounds. 120 pounds, 60 pounds of gear probably was a bit much to manage, particularly being in the middle of winter and with the rough cut leather boots on. So how long did we determine she was at Camp McCoy for?
We actually did not, but generally it said it was about 4 weeks.
4 weeks, probably 4 weeks as induction, and then I believe the whole thing is 16 overall for the various other little breakouts. You can see the photographs here. They're getting slightly more along the lines. This one is entitled Fatigues and Trash Cans. I'm guessing we had to clean those trash cans. And there you can see the nurses there again. There's more than 5 sad sacks this time. She's the one in the very center right here. She's not wearing her glasses in this point for some reason. But they're looking at the trash cans, and they're wearing their women-specific HBTs with the pockets on the front, not on the side of the legs like the American males. And you can see their female shoes. I also see some leg there. That's probably a little bit chilly. You can see some white leg hanging out. I'm sure it's probably a little bit sore by this point of all the marching. Let's skip to these. These are my favorites, and everyone's going to see why these are my favorites. So it's
kind of grandmother's in
yes.
these pictures.
Okay. So be forewarned. This is my grandmother, but I'm starting to realize that she might have had a little bit of a dirty side. Could have been. So here we see a photograph. I'll read the back of it for you first, and you can take it for what you may. But it says here, GIs and Snuggies, and 5 so round, so firm, so fully packed nurses taken in a room at Camp McCoy. ... Very shocking. Now, this image is not pornographic by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little interesting, and I'll let everyone take a good close look at this image. And, well, as you can see, we're flaunting our curvage here in the photograph. And that's my grandmother up on the bunk in the back with the glasses and the Jeep cap on. So, yeah. We're
not quite like everybody else.
Yeah, not quite like everybody else. Everyone's, yeah. So, particularly, yeah. So, we like to take photographs that night. And here we have a very similar photograph. Actually, we see a hobby hat here. Actually, 2 hobby hats here. I know those are big amongst collectors and fans of the ANC. So, yeah, risque, exactly. So, we're not going to comment on undergarments here or lack of undergarment. But on the back of this one, we have the Feeble 5 again. I'm looking for Indians, Pinky for angels, and none of us see any pink elephants just yet. So I'm imagining that some alcohol was in play here.
At the very least.
At the very least. Our time at Camp McCoy was ending. As you see, dress issued, uniforms have been issued here, and now we are going to move along. Nurse cap, yeah, well, roger that. I was looking below the cap. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the hat wear. Anyway, here we have the what was the back of this one say? Let's read it first. We 3 in front of our truck, the one at Camp McCoy. It took us there and brought us back again. Wherever there was, I have no idea. But there it is. It looks to me like I see one axle, so that is a 3/4 ton, probably a Chevy G506. I'm not 100%, but anyway, it's one of the ones I don't have. But there we have, standing out there in the freezing cold. It's probably about 15 degrees. Nice skirts. I do see some, yeah, I know, me distracted by boobs. Thank you, Laura. That's professional and wonderful. Okay, anyway. We see here our lieutenant on the left is blinking for the photograph. My grandmother's looking very, like she's just told a really bad joke, and the girl on the right looks completely lost. So here we have that photograph. And then we have a very interesting photograph of the old officers club, and we're having a party. It's obviously for someone's birthday here. Now, this is where part of our story gets a little interesting, because the lady in the front row, seated all the way to the left with her glasses on. When we saw, thank you, third hand. Thank you. When we saw the other stories this morning, we noticed that one of the stories was by a person that had glasses. And in the story, she mentioned very explicitly that she had worn glasses and that she was one of the only people in the unit to wear glasses. When we hold the photographs up to the next to each other, it very clearly could be her. Now, again, it's a unit of 300 women. The chances are mathematically 1 in 30. But the mention of the glasses to me is what kind of makes it a possibility, and that they do look very much like in the photograph. So it is our belief that my grandmother, who in the photograph is seated above the woman, she has her hand on her shoulder of the woman who has the sweater on and sitting in front of her birthday cake. We believe that the woman seated at the far left with her hands folded in the glasses, we believe they were together all the way until, what did it say? That she went to Saipan.
She went to Saipan, but
and my grandmother went to Japan.
She went back to the States. So why she went to Saipan and then went back? It's
probably heard from someone like, if you go to Saipan, you'll cycle back faster because there's a transport headed that way or something. Anyway, so, Camp McCoy, January, training's over. They then move to Fort Jackson, or Camp Jackson, in South Carolina. Fort Jackson.
It was Fort Jackson.
It's still Fort Jackson in South Carolina? Okay. I know it had something to do with the size at this point. We've graduated basic, and we've had our studio photograph taken. Hello, Sarah. All right. So, obviously, the weather in Fort Jackson is much more mild. And there's some good photographs in here. Whether this is arriving or departing...
They're shopping.
They're shopping. Women shop. It happens. So here we have them strolling down the street in Columbia, South Carolina, which, as if anyone knows, is near Fort Jackson. And if you flip to the back, I'm not going to show the wording on this one because...
Your grandmother is very tired.
She's very tired.
But she expresses it in the 40s language.
And is saying nasty things.
No.
Okay, well, this is Joyce and Freddie and I, after 4 hours of slogging through... shopping. That says shopping. Yeah. I thought it said slogging.
No.
Shopping in Columbia. I was just as tired as I looked. Now, apparently in the 1940s, a word for tired was something that's not quite all what it is today. I was a bit shocked by what it said at first, but no. For those of you who know anything about 1940s vernacular, you can just assume whatever you want to assume. But she does look rather tired and upset in this picture. But they do have an awful lot of bags under their arms, I'm noticing now. So they must have been saving up that GI pay. And
they're single ladies.
Oh, this is it. They're single ladies. That one in the middle is not too bad looking. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Robert Martin is now curious. Rob, is that you? That's you, isn't it? I know Robert Martin. Anyway. So, training at Fort Jackson continues on the Army way. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you all later, all right? Training on continues in Fort Jackson, and now we are wearing some awesomely oversized HBT one pieces. We got our field gear on, our M36 musette bags.
I love coveralls.
M1 helmets, our boots. And this is where she was telling me that they would go on the 12-mile marches through the swamps.
That makes sense.
And the route marches and all of that stuff.
There. In Fort Jackson, that's not what in Camp McCoy. It's very basic.
Yeah, so in Fort Jackson here is more of a finishing school. I see that Model 36 pistol belt there, or Model 12. I can't really tell from this range. But we got our musette bags on and those M1 helmets. I sit here thinking, and this is the collector in me thinking like, oh, $400 a piece. Okay, great. And then we have, did I miss a notation? No, I didn't. Okay, same photograph more or less. But this one is notated on the back. Hopefully there's nothing wrong here. Pinky and I, just after we came back from our bivouac. Have you ever seen such sad sacks? So I imagine we're probably a little footsore and stinky at this point, but that's the Army way. Just wish I could see what the sign says. Probably says ON. Only women, maybe. I don't know. This photograph here, we are dressed back up and we're sitting on the steps of those same barracks that's in the back picture of this one here. You can see that the awnings are the same. See the same awnings? And actually, I probably figured that that stairs is the one that's over by this thing here. Same barrack. When we did the whole barracks thing, they didn't have the awnings over the windows like that. I wonder if that's like a you can't see the girls inside kind of defensive thing for the local gents. No, Pinky was not my grandmom's name.
He's asking what was your grandmother's name.
My grandmother's name was I didn't even.
What was her nickname?
That's absolutely terrible. My grandmother's name was Dorothy. Her name is Dorothy Ann Morgan.
She didn't have a nickname.
Yes, she did. She went by the name Dot.
Oh.
So that is Dot. So it would be Pinky, Dot, and Pinky and Dot, or Dot and Pinky. So that's just sitting outside the same barrack. As you can tell, it's much warmer there in South Carolina than it is in Fort McCoy. But here's a picture that all the reenactor people out there are going to love, and all those people that ever have had to contend with these are going to love. Here we have yet another setup for a route march, which I love that we're doing it in our white and our very light colored nursing uniforms with leggings. Obviously, the photo taker is captured himself down there in the corner. But this, and I didn't notice my grandmother wearing her helmet on the back of her head, which, yeah, must have had a lot of hair stuffed in that helmet. In the background, you can see the, that's got a chimney on it, so that's probably the chow hall. There's an open area to the right of that. So, but from the reenactor standpoint, I love the one woman here wearing her suspenders completely the wrong way with the flaps hanging out. But the back is what's best, where it says, time 8 a.m., place drill field, Fort Jackson. Subjects, I'm going to guess that's Conn, Luke, Morgan, and Whitmore. Condition, just before a 12-mile road march. Error, Lieutenant Morgan, that being my grandmother, my leggings are on backwards. So, if you've ever had to put these leggings on, you'll understand that, first off, I mean, I'm not dyslexic by any stretch of imagination, but I can never get them right. But the problem is if you put them on backwards, the little hooks face forward. So every time you walk by a bush or grass or anything that's a catching trip or hazard, yeah, you're going to rip it right out of the ground. And you'll realize really fast that they're on backwards. Plus, they're also very tight fitting that way. So from Fort Jackson...
How do you manage to put them on backwards?
It's very easy. I mean, I do it all the time. Or inside out, it's more like what I do.
What?
So, in doing our research, what we realized is that this unit was never meant to go to the Pacific theater where she ended up. It was supposed to go to, she always told me Europe, which sidebar...
They were supposed to go to Europe.
So sidebar here, her uncle, Harold, was a battalion surgeon, and he had gone to Europe very early on, and he was actually fighting over in Europe at this point. In fact, he was just about to be wounded and sent home. But we always wondered if she was trying to get to him. But one bit of paperwork that we saw states that they were actually meant to go to the China Theater, CBI Theater. Well, the story that she tells, the story that she tells is that they were issued all of their winter clothing, and after they had been issued everything, and this jives with one of the other stories that we read this morning, didn't it? Where they issued all their winter clothing, and then someone came through and said, "Oh, nope, sorry, big mix-up. You guys are going to the Pacific. Please turn in all of your winter clothing and draw mosquito nets and lotions and short pants and all this other jazz." So, complete change of mind. We're not going there anymore. We're going to the Pacific. They go from Fort Jackson all the way back to the West Coast, And what we determined was they embarked in Portland, Oregon.
Right.
Correct?
It was in Portland, Oregon that they left from. And what was the ship?
The ship was the SS Matsonia. SS Matsonia was a pre-World War I passenger liner that was commissioned
and
for
converted.
for the Matsonia line, and was used as a troop transport in World War One. It was then purchased by the Army, changed names, and then sold back to the Army after World War One was over. Then sold back to the Army again, but they kept the name this time as SS Matsonia. And she departed from Oregon. And on the trip there, it was, I believe the trip there was Oregon to Hawaii, right? So,
well, I'm not sure if they went directly. I thought it was Oregon to San Francisco, and then I believe they stopped in Hawaii, and then they continued on. I'm not sure if they stopped in any other islands in between.
So we have two photographs from the Matsonia here. Right here, Reese, who we talked about before. Remember Reese who had a birthday? Reese had a birthday, and here we are in the Matsonia, and it is now July. So we've gone from January to July, so it's 7 months. And we are on the Matsonia, and we are wearing our flower leis. So we are probably entering Pearl Harbor at this point. She did talk about Pearl Harbor and entering there and seeing, at this point, there wasn't much of the Arizona left. But there was, obviously, Pearl Harbor was a huge base at this point with hundreds of ships everywhere. They probably stopped there for fuel and then bounced on out of there.
Right.
And then there's another photograph here where they are on the same ship and kind of almost in the same place. And you can see the stack of the ship right there. And this looks like the base of it again here. When I looked at the photographs of the Matsonia, you can actually see right where they were standing when they took this picture, because it's a very unique ship. It has one mast all the way, or one stack all the way stern, and a large pile of life boats in front of it, or life rafts, I guess. But anyway, so they are on this transport for, what did she say, a month?
It took them an entire month to get over to Tinian, yes.
So imagine spending a month on this rickety old boat, and then, I can only imagine the conditions and the hull. So they go to, let me make a camera adjustment right here for 1 second. All right. So they go to leave Pearl Harbor. They go across the Pacific, and they're told they're headed for the Marianas Islands, but not really where. Slight moving here. So they arrived at the Marianas Islands and are told they're to disembark on Tinian.
But they can't disembark in the harbor.
They can't disembark in the harbor because they arrived right during the aftermath of the Cobra Typhoon. For anyone who doesn't know what the Cobra Typhoon is, that was the massive storm that enveloped all of the Pacific. And Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet sailed through it a couple times, and lots of ships were lost, and the weather was just abysmal. And so they couldn't dock at the pier, so the Navy, being the Navy, decided, we're going to load them into LCVPs over the side of the ship, having to go down scrambler nets. So now you have 300 women.
Which thankfully they learned how to navigate the ropes and the ladders in Fort Jackson in the training and all of that type of thing.
Yes, my grandmother described, I remember when I learned how to swim when I was younger, she's told me about how she had to learn to swim with a full pack and kit, and how it was very difficult because if you couldn't keep up, you just went straight to the bottom.
Yep.
But obviously going on transport, they had to be able to swim. Obviously, it was definitely a big swim qual. And now you're trying to manage your stuff down a scrambler net, which, has anyone ever done a scrambler net knows, it's scary by itself. And they're climbing down the side of this ocean liner into a heaving LCVP, which is just kicking up and down on 15-foot waves.
Right, as the water's
And you kind of got to time yourself, so when the boat comes up, you jump.
Yeah.
I wonder how many nurses ended up in the water that day, because it must have been quite the fiasco. So she ends up on Tinian, and there is some debate about which unit is there at the time. One says the 347th, the other one says the 309th. But what we know about Tinian is the place is horrible. It's absolutely horrible there.
Right.
It is hot and dry, but at the same time also wet and mildewy.
Right.
That's even a possibility. The entire island has been stripped bare and recovered with crushed coral by the sea bees. So the sand is not sand, it's actually razor sharp coral crushings. And in a couple photographs, we'll see, that whole scenario. So they're there. Bear in mind that the island is still not 100% secure. Most of these islands in the Pacific were not 100% secured. They were they still had the Japanese running around there. And we'll get to another couple stories that she told me when I was a kid there in a second. But going through the photographs here, we have a lot of women doing their laundry. And bear with me because I have two sets of glasses on. It's a little hard for me to see what I'm pointing at. We're going to try this one first. And here we have, doing laundry there. And again, you can almost kind of see that crushed, almost like kitty litter class dirt on the ground. She said that you had to wear shoes all the time. But the problem was that it got in your shoes and then cut your feet to ribbons no matter what. And here we have, I sure hated to iron those skirts too. Which, again, hang up on the line there. Lots of laundry doing here. Next photograph says, Tinian, here we go. That's coral, not snow under my dainty feet. Note the band-aids on the left and the string holding on the right shower shoe. Oh. And note that she is wearing nothing but appears to be a brassiere. But yeah, we got some band-aids on her feet, and I see the rope now holding her shoe together. As we had said, that stuff there is razor sharp. It's like broken glass almost. But yes, everyone says to see the picture of the grandmother in her underwear. Wonderful. Anyway, here's another friend doing her laundry. She looks really happy, doesn't she? Yeah, I get some hearts on that one. Really happy. Hello, Sergio. And again, doing that laundry in the background. And there's the barbed wire fence. Oh, remember the barbed wire fence? Remember the story of what we read? That they were kept behind a barbed wire fence, right? Because, it's an island with 4,000 men?
Something like that.
Well, it was 40 to 1. So 40 to 1. So a lot of men. The nurses were kept behind a barbed wire fence, which you can see there in the background. I don't think it's for the Japanese. I think it's probably for the Americans more than anything. I'm getting a bad glint here. There we go. Yeah, so here we have nothing. Again, I'm sorry, I can't see the back before I get to them. Doing some more laundry in her underwear. We are real big about underwear tonight. Hey, look, there's a box of Does soap. See it? In the corner. And there's a helmet. Of course, we're using our helmets for washing. Several helmets being used for washing here. Oh, that's that previous girl who's looking so happy in the picture. Quonset hut in the background. I'm guessing that's probably the showers in front of them.
Possibly.
And nothing on this one. But yeah, laundry. Plenty of laundry. The necessities of life.
Okay, so that's the outfit that they...
Okay, so the outfits changing from this point. Here we see the infamous turban being worn. The working turban. And the HBTs. The HBT, I guess that looks like a one piece, if Laura can confirm that. I know you're still out there.
Love the
And she's got a civilian sweater on at this point. But this uniform, although comfortable, is not to her liking, where she writes in the back. This was taken by a Navy combat photographer. This is an outfit we wear on duty, a far cry from our white uniforms, starched caps. Gruesome, isn't it? It is a little bit gruesome, I guess. But an island of 4,000 men and there's only 300 women.
But in the research this morning, they talked about also wearing that the nurse's seersucker dress uniform too, or dress, the wrap dress, and that they were able to implement there, and because of the weather and how the climate was and everything like that, they even mentioned one story. She mentioned being able to forego having to wear stockings and the garter belt and any other undergarments because of the weather and the climate conditions.
There's that undergarment again. Okay, so this is where the history gets a little murky for us. We're working on trying to get some more information from it. Now, Tinian, of course, is home to one of the 3 large wings. Seersucker raptor has heart eyes.
Yes, Laura, it's that seersucker raptor, the brown and white one.
So the Marianas are made up of 3 islands, primarily of American interest, and that'd be Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. Each one of those islands houses a complete U.S. bomb wing of B-29 super fortresses. A bomb wing is about 110 to 150 aircraft. Of course, the B-29 being a massive aircraft takes up a huge amount of real estate. I would have to look up and see which wing was on Tinian as opposed to Saipan or Guam. But apparently there's a lot of back and forth between the islands. And now here is where I received some interesting information tonight that apparently my grandmother, of course, being one of those 300 against 4,000 men, had a boyfriend. That was not my grandfather at some point. And he was a B-29 pilot. And unfortunately, he was, in fact, killed. I am hoping that my aunt can come up with the other photo album that has more information of that in it. And as we all know, the B-29 was a very finicky aircraft. It did have a very high casualty rate. It was, not totally combat proven at this point. But there's a lot of back and forth between the islands. That's what I'm trying to get to. So she would say about going back and forth to Guam a lot. So here we have them sitting on a hull of what looks like to be an LVT-6 or 7. Of course, bombed out. And on the back, there's no information. It says it's Tinian. Well, thank you. So descriptive. Again, a burned out USMC vehicle. And here we have an interesting photograph. A large black plume of smoke. And on the back, it says... This is where I wonder if Hank and I, Top and Buddy, watching a B-29 burn up. Now, obviously, the aircraft, if they could not make it to Iwo Jima and crash land there, the aircraft would make it all the way back to Tinian. And by the time these wounded aircraft got back to the field, there were a lot of accidents. Of course, there's a lot of accidents in period. I mean, they said that taking off a B-29 off of North Field on Tinian was the equivalent of 1 second heart jump because you didn't know if you're going to make it off the end of the runway because the runway just ended at a cliff. It wasn't, since the B-29 is a tricycle landing gear, it doesn't climb out like a tail dragger does. Either you go to the end of the cliff and you're flying, or you're not into the water. I always mention there's quite a few B-29 wrecks at the bottom of that cliff right there. But there we see some of the aftermath here. Now, of course, being a nurse, a surgical nurse, she is there as part of the contingent that has arrived to help the crews returning from these Japanese raids. You're primarily seeing burns, shrapnel wounds, and that sort of thing. So they're there to support this bomb wing.
Well, they were also sent there because the hospital, they didn't know at the time that she originally was going to be sent to China, and then she was sent to Tinian, and that because the thought was that there was going to be a buildup for
Operation Olympic, the invasion of Japan.
The invasion of Japan, right. And they did see a lot of and I'm probably skipping ahead, but they saw a lot of action going on around them with the B-29s taking off and everything like that. They did not know what actually was going on. They did not know anything about the plan for the bombs being dropped.
The atomic bomb.
The atomic bombs in Japan. So they just saw this all happening, and actually one of the nurses' stories that I was reading actually said they didn't know until a week after what had actually happened. And they found out when they were then told that they weren't going to have to go to China, and that they weren't actually even going to have to go to Japan, and that eventually where they were in Tinian, the hospital was no longer really in need because of being not necessary at that point.
Right. So, I mean, you're seeing all this going on. You have a soda straw view of it. You're not really understanding what's going on around you. All you see are these hundreds and hundreds of planes taking off every day. And
they didn't realize they were watching history in the making.
They didn't. So there is a photograph out there, and I'm hoping it's going to turn up in our research later. But I do have a photograph, or have seen a photograph of her sitting on the nose wheel of Enola Gay. And in the photograph, Enola Gay's inboard starboard engine is removed. Which, if you know anything about the history, they removed that engine after it came back from the raid because it was running rough. So this is after the attack. Well, they didn't put the name Enola Gay until the morning it took off. But anyway, so not knowing that history had just ended World War II right from their very backyard, they do receive information, of course, that the Japanese had capitulated in September, or August and September. And then they appear to be given a choice of assignments at this point, where some people go to Saipan, some people go to the Philippines, some people go to Tinian, or some people from Tinian go to other places. So, Jeff, this part is for you. There is remnants of a newsletter that were in her stuff here called Small World. This is the Marianas. And my grandmother always referred to the Marianas as the moldy Marianas because the joke was that your shoes actually mildewed. So you were hot and dry, but your shoes would mildew. And this talks about, getting out that word there. It talks about how, the war has ended and they're sending envoys out to places to surrender. Now, on the back, if anyone was here with me last time, we saw I did a story about the 86th Infantry Division, the Blackhawks. And in this newsletter, which was in my grandmother's footlocker, right here it talks about the Black Hawk Division coming out to the Pacific. It said San Francisco A&S, that's Allied News Service, the 86th Black Hawk Division, first combat outfit to return to the U.S. from Europe, is being sent to the Pacific. The division was sailed from Europe in February 1945 and saw 42 days of combat in the final days of the German War, is leaving all High Point men eligible for discharge in the United States. So that's a nice little tie-in to our other presentation we gave last week about the Black Hawk Division, and that's just for you, Jeff. All right, so my grandmother decides that she's going to go to Japan because she's very low number. She doesn't have enough points. She doesn't have enough points for going home, obviously. So she boards a transport for Japan, and the transport heads north, and actually they take them past Nagasaki, I believe it was. It is where it is. It wasn't Hiroshima, it was Nagasaki. And so they crossed past the date. I will get you the date later, or remind me later. The transports crossed Nagasaki, and they kind of wanted to show the troops what the America had become capable of. And here we actually see a photograph taken by her on the transport, and this is them crossing the Bay of Nagasaki, and they're looking out over Nagasaki, what's left of Nagasaki at this point. And the one thing that always sticks in my mind is when she talked about this moment as they crossed by, and there's this dead silence. And as the ships creeped past, you could smell it. You could smell Nagasaki. And she made the rather interesting analogy that the smell of Nagasaki was that of dog excrement and burnt hair. Now you can imagine, seeing this. Like this, what is this weapon we have unleashed? We knew nothing about this. And notice she doesn't take a photograph of Nagasaki. She takes a photograph of everyone's reaction looking at Nagasaki for the first time. And to me, the looks on their faces looks like disbelief. Like, what have we done? Or, oh my God, we're this powerful. Of course, you got to remember at this time of the war, or end of the war, that the United States Pacific Fleet was larger than every other Allied power's navy combined. So to cruise through the Pacific with just absolute impunity, And to see that we now have the ability to smash a city with one blow must have been rather awe-inspiring. They disembarked in a place called Fukuoka.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced.
You think it's Fukuoka? It's spelt rather interestingly. Again, yeah. Anyway, and they set up a hospital there as part of the 309th. And here she is on the roof with several associates. Now this is part of the good. This is part of the good. This is a good part of the story. Here in Fukuoka, she meets this man. His name is Thomas William Jones, and he is a technician third grade from the great state of New Jersey.
He's an enlisted
man. That's right. My grandmother, who was an officer, meets this gentleman right here, Thomas. And this is where your curator tonight, your host tonight, Jeremy, begins to exist, because if it wasn't for this meeting, I would not exist. So yes, this is a photograph of my grandfather. They met in Fukuoka at the 309th General Hospital, and the rest is family history. So they meet there. We're not quite sure how old Granddad, who never broke a rule in his life, this man was straight as an arrow from the time I can remember him. We're saving that. We're saving that one.
That's a good one.
This man is straight as an arrow. He never broke a rule a day in his life. He had the Army Good Conduct Medal quite a few times, probably. This is my grandfather. This was a small side trip they took. They found this poor Japanese girl. And come to find out after the war, after reading her letters, that she actually helped one of these Japanese girls grow up, provided them with money and food for years and years, which is hilarious because they never said anything about it. And we always thought they were very anti-Japanese. But apparently they actually funded this one small Japanese girl. And I believe that's her. And the last letter that I could find from her is a letter from her thanking them as she graduated college as a nurse.
That's neat.
As a nurse. So that's my grandmother on the right with her shawl on and her 43 field jacket, rocking those double buckle boots, and a small Japanese kid that they found somewhere. Hopefully things worked out for them.
Now can I put it down?
Now you can put it down. So here they are. Thomas and Dorothy, now betrothed. No, they were.
No, he's still in the service.
Yeah, no, they're still in the service, but they were engaged. They got engaged in Japan
engaged.
because the
weren't
ring is here. We'll get to that in a minute. So here is my grandfather and my grandmother. I don't know where this photograph is taken. It could be taken in Japan, either Japan or perhaps when they just got back here. But yes, they met there in Japan. This is the beginning for my father and his brother and sister. And so if it was not for the Second World War, I'd never exist, because they met there. That she had blazed a trail all the way to Tokyo and found love there from a guy from New Jersey, of all things. So they, Thomas here, he had been in the service for a while at this point.
2 years.
2 years,
7 months?
2 years, 7 months, so 3 years basically. And I think he's an RTC before that. So he had enough points to rotate home. He went ahead and went home and left my grandmother there once her points accrued. So once her points accrued, telegram in March, they had obviously arranged to meet somewhere. And I have here the Western Union telegram. Obviously, you had to pay by the word here because it's very short and sweet. And if I can twist it enough, you can probably see on there. It says sailing March 13th, Dorothy. So this is the Western Union telegram to my grandfather saying that they're coming home, or she's coming home, and that they'll meet there. So once they meet back in good old New Jersey, there's a newspaper article stating that the announce a truth of Army nurse and veteran, the Mr. and Mrs. Walter C. Morgan, who we'll talk about at some other point because he was also a World War I veteran, and we have all of his items too. Again, engagement of their daughter, Lieutenant Dorothy Ann Morgan, nurse to Thomas W. Jones, son of Mr. and Mrs. Thomas W. Jones, Sr. of Floral Avenue, The wedding will take place June 9th. Lieutenant Morgan will be discharged from the service on Saturday. She's a graduate of Logansport High School and the Michael Reese School of Nurses Training School in Chicago. So, what does it say here in the bottom? Both he and his fiancée were with the 309th General Hospital in the Marianas in the occupation of Japan. And so then on that June 9th day, they are married. And the rest is history. We have here a few other photographs of just them together. My grandfather was in Rutgers University at the time. They lived together in Rutgers. Being a veteran, he was given a Jeep to drive. And they had a small camper they lived in for a while. And yeah, the rest is family history. But we have here some very nice artifacts of her time. Amongst other things, I'm trying to do this one here. There we go. There we go. All right.
What do you want?
We'll have assistant go for it. So, the Seabees in the Pacific had a lot of time on their hands after they were done making airfields, and they made jewelry for sale, of course. Jewelry and trinkets. Now, you'll see here is a watch. It is made out of aircraft aluminum. And if you'll note, the time now is, what is the time right now? It is 8:16, and it's upside down. 8:16, and it's still running.
I love this watch. This is my favorite watch.
But you'll notice on the side, it says Tinian, hand inscribed. On the other side, the Marianas.
Uh-huh.
So while in Japan, my grandfather wanted to marry my grandmother, not having a ring.
Oh, ring.
Ring. Give me that back. Bought my grandmother this. Probably shouldn't put it on that finger. Bought my grandmother this dragon ring in Fukuoka, Japan. Again, a simple steel ring. Made probably on a street corner somewhere. Hello, Dan. And also, this is from Tinian also. This is actually a piston ring bracelet. These were actually very popular at the time. This is made out of a piston ring of an engine. Judging by the size of it, probably nothing. Well, I mean, it could have been anything if they cut it down. She always said it was a piston ring from a B-29. I don't think so, not that thin. It's probably from a truck or another large piece of equipment. You see the inside. Actually, you know what? That is an aircraft piece of aluminum because that color right there, that is zinc chromate paint, buddy. That's zinc chromate paint inside.
Well, hopefully it's not bad because I've worn that a lot.
Well, I don't think it's too cancer causing.
Oh, great.
But yep, look at that. Zinc chromate paint. So that is a piece of an aircraft of some kind. Probably not a piston ring if there's paint on the inside. Could have been anything in an aircraft, actually. But yes, this was from the island of Tinian. And now it's on the floor. Anyway, so we have here her service cap, her side hat, her overseas hat. Her victory medal, this is a reissue, but this is one that she got from the Veterans Department because she had lost her own. So it's just a restrike. This is the 6th Service Corps patch. This is the patch she would have worn when she was still in Wisconsin. This the 6th was responsible for the Midwest, like Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois area. And we have her ends. These could be post-war ends. I'm not sure. I think the color is different than World War II ends. But these were hers. They were on her collar at one point. And this is the only mystery part of the story. Well, there's plenty of mysteries in the story. But this is her hat. And you can see clearly in it her name right there. Right? And she was promoted to first lieutenant. But when this hat came in, it actually had the second lieutenant butter bar still on it. But in the hat, this is what makes no sense to me is, yeah, so we got some yen here. Obviously, Japan, got it. But Japanese government, 10 pesos. This is Filipino money. Which I'm not 100% sure why she would have had this unless she traded for it or got it from someone else. But it wasn't her hat, which is also strange. But of that, just neat things neat family. I mean, you can't really replace things like this. I mean, monetary value, not much. But, I mean, so neat that, I mean, it's been, what, 75 years? 70 years? What? I'm terrible at math. 55 from 1945 to 55 and 23 is 78. 78 years. Yeah. It's been 78 years. The watch is still running. Very neat. So, Dorothy has since passed away. This is her burial flag here. So, this is her coffin flag from when she was buried. Of course, the funeral parlor in New Jersey not being the best, they did not have a flag, so we had to rush out and get one, and I managed to just happen to have the proper flag. So here she is, still to this day, still folded. A photograph of her as she left nursing school in Chicago, young and as yet not super traveled. Yep, takes a look and keeps on ticking, that's for sure. Yeah. And then we had here a whole suitcase full of evasion maps. I'm guessing these might have been the boyfriends who didn't make it. I don't know how else to put that. But there's a whole suitcase full of these evasion maps, and they're all of the South China Sea, the Yellow Sea, everywhere you'd need if you were flying to and from Tinian to Japan. And we'll close here with her service record. This is just a mimeograph record. Now, of an interesting fact of knowledge, when I was, I guess probably about 23 or 4, and she passed, I received a check in the mail from the U.S. government for $10,000.
Oh.
Because it was her GI life insurance. She never cashed it in and never canceled it. So I got that infamous check for $10,000.
Oh.
Yeah, I got the $10,000 check.
Oh, nice.
From her. It literally said on her GI life insurance, 1945 on it. This is her, essentially what passed for a DD-214 back in the day. And it's a mimeograph copy. It's not the original. But this shows here her get out of her separation center being Fort Sheridan, Illinois. Her rank, country. The only thing that's weird in here is I did not see occupation medal, which should have been on there, but it's not. Wounds received none. Service schools attended none. And again, service schools attended none. She was in school in the service for a year. I don't quite understand what that whole thing's about.
She didn't go to any special
Didn't go to special schools, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah, she was in the Continental service for 7 months and foreign service for 7 months. So that being a year and change. Lapel pin issued. Of course, you couldn't travel in the United States without your ruptured duck pin. And there it is on there. Yep, on terminal leave through March 24th, 1946 to April. So she had, what is that, a month and a half of back pay, basically. Mm-hmm. So.
But you always said that your grandparents wanted to go back in.
Yes.
Well into whenever.
Yeah, my grandparents were ready to go back into the service at any one given time. I swear that they probably wanted to go back for Desert Storm, for all I know. My grandfather was mustered out not too long before the Korean War broke out. But if you look at his paperwork, he was registered as not necessary for the war effort. I'll actually put it right there. And, so the rest is history. If anyone has any questions about tonight's presentation, please go ahead and say them now, as we have a few minutes left. If you are just tuning in or you not know who we are the Ghost of the Battlefield Military Historic Collection here in sunny Virginia Beach. Well, not so sunny today. And we are a small museum of about 3,700 square feet of military history ranging from 1900 to the modern era. We have several vehicles on hand, some large artillery pieces, rifles and pistols, shotguns, uniforms.
Memorabilia.
But for us, this is what it's all about right here. It is about the family aspect. It is about the known individual aspect. It is about the history of the soldier. So if you have anything you wanted to share, please, you can hit me up and message me directly. If you look at this video, you'll see right there is a live chat to the right. But once this video publishes, there'll be a send a message. So you can see me. Yes, we have a Jeep, Angela. Yes. We have a Jeep. Our Jeep's name is Frankenstein, and we will do a big story on it at some point. Frankenstein's very mad at me today because I still haven't taken it for a ride, and it's been 2 weeks, and it's probably going to really hate me when I fire up in a couple days. But yes, we have a Jeep. We have a Dodge 3/4 ton. We have a Chandler fast attack vehicle. We have an M37 and various other things, as one does. But again, we are a charitable 501c3 organization. Mm-hmm. We can accept donations. They are all tax deductible, and we also love stories. If you can send us a story or photographs of anyone who's in the service, any era. We do a lot of Vietnam era posts and stories. We just had a big event here where we were recording veteran stories for the National Archives, and yeah, we're just going to continue to expand, continue to keep going.
We like to connect.
Yes,
people and stories and that.
Love to connect. Oh, okay, fine, Jeff. Date of the 86th story. I will hold this camera very carefully, and I will find that date for you. The date is 19 August 1945. And this was published by the Island Command Tinian, Volume 6, Number 19. I'll throw that right there in front of you. You can see it. Boom.
Jeff, if you send him a private message with your email address, I can scan you a copy and send you that article.
Yeah, I can do that. Easy enough.
Angela wants to know, do you have any World War II swords from?
Does she saying that she has them, or do I have them? The answer is yes on both. We don't really do a whole lot of stuff here with the Germans. What we do have here is primarily veteran bringbacks and war trophies. We might do a post on that or a live stream on that, but you have to be extremely careful on Facebook, because if you happen to show the nasty, okay, well, yeah, the nasty Nazi logo, you can get in a lot of trouble. You two have them, so like NCO swords or something. We have a couple beautiful daggers, Luftwaffe daggers and Wehrmacht daggers. Yeah. Anyone have any questions, any interesting things, or if you have a piece and you don't know what it is, send me a picture. I can more than likely figure out what it is for you, and that's something I enjoy doing. But I think this is pretty much a wrap for tonight. Well, we are closing in on 2 minutes worth of till an hour. It's going to be a record so far as how long this one's gone. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We will be back again Friday night, when Dan Kahn, who you'll see his name popping up there in the corner, is going to be presenting a fascinating look at his grandfather, Sergeant Jonathan Ott Jr., Senior, who was a B-29 ball turret gunner. Now that is the absolute most dangerous job in the 8th Air Force, and he has an amazing collection of his memorabilia and photographs that we're going to be sharing with you on Friday night. So yeah, Jeff, come back and meet us again on Friday night if you can at 7:30. And yes, they are both since passed on now. I wish I had more time with them, and I feel nothing but loss for the loss of the history. So I'm doing absolutely everything I can do to preserve their history now. And I hope everyone out there takes a lesson from that, once they're gone, the history can be lost for absolutely ever. So document it, or get them to document it if they're still with you. I think that's about all we have for tonight, right, Heather? We've had a good time presenting to you. Hope you had a good time watching. And we will see you again on Friday night at 7:30. Have a good evening.
Bye.